I want you to imagine a relationship. You meet someone. They're beautiful. Everyone tells you this is the one. Your parents love them. Society says if you don't lock this down, you've failed at life. So you commit. Hard. You drain your savings for the ring. You sign papers that bind you for 30 years. And then, slowly, you realize this relationship is bleeding you dry. You can't go out with friends anymore because they get jealous of your time. Every month they demand more money. They constantly need repairs, attention, maintenance. You're stressed, you're tired, but you can't leave because you've already given them everything, and walking away means admitting you made a mistake. I'm not talking about a toxic partner. I'm talking about your house. And look, I know that sounds dramatic, but stay with me for a second. Because there's this thing happening in America right now that nobody wants to say out loud. Millions of people who made it, who did the responsible thing, who checked the homeownership box, are quietly drowning. They own a home on paper, but in reality, the home owns them. We call this being house poor. And look, I'm not here to tell you that buying a house is stupid. I'm not here to say renting forever is the answer. That would be lazy, and honestly, that would be a lie. What I am here to do is have a real conversation about something nobody wants to admit out loud. For a lot of people, the American dream of homeownership has quietly turned into a financial prison, and most of them don't even realize they're inmates. Now here's what's wild. The usual advice you hear is, just buy less house, or you should have saved more, or my personal favorite, stop buying avocado toast. As if the problem is your breakfast choices and not the fact that home prices have completely disconnected from reality. But that's not what's actually happening here. The math has fundamentally broken, and I can prove it to you in the next few minutes in a way that might genuinely change how you think about the biggest purchase of your life. Whether you already own, whether you're trying to buy, or whether you're sitting there wondering if you'll ever be able to, this matters. Quick thing though, nothing I say here is financial advice. I'm not your advisor, I don't know your situation, and I'm definitely not telling you to buy or not buy anything. This is just me sharing a perspective, based on data, based on patterns I've observed, and based on a whole lot of conversations with people who are living this right now. Cool? Cool. I'm Dom, by the way, and if this is your first time here, what we do on this channel is break down the stuff about money that everybody feels but nobody explains. The real mechanics behind why things are the way they are. And honestly, if that sounds useful to you, if you've ever felt like the financial world is a game where nobody gave you the rulebook, hit subscribe, because that's literally what we're building here. The rulebook. Together. All right, let's get into it. So, what does house poor actually mean? Because I think people throw this term around without really understanding the weight of it. House poor doesn't mean you can't pay your mortgage. You can. Every month, you make that payment. You're not behind. You're not in foreclosure. On paper, you're doing great. But here's what your life actually looks like. Your friend texts the group chat about a weekend trip, and you're already doing mental math trying to figure out if you can swing it. You can't. So you make an excuse. Again, date night with your partner has become Netflix, and whatever's in the fridge because restaurants aren't in the budget anymore. Your car is making a weird sound, but you're just hoping it goes away because you can't handle another expense right now. And that emergency fund everyone talks about? Yours has been temporarily borrowed from so many times it's basically a fiction. You have a house, but you don't have a life. And the cruel irony is that you did everything right. You saved for years. You got pre-approved. You made a responsible offer. You didn't buy the absolute max the bank said you could afford. You were smart about it. But smart doesn't matter when the game itself is broken. Let me show you what I mean. Back in 1980, the median home price in America was about 3.5 times the median household income. That means if a family made $50,000 a year, a typical house cost around $175,000. That's a stretch, sure, but it's doable. It's within the realm of reason. Today, the median home price is 7 to 8 times the median income. In cities like Austin, Denver, Phoenix, we're talking 10, 11, 12 times income, just to buy something average, not a mansion, average. So the house that your parents bought on one salary now requires 2 salaries, possibly a side hustle, and increasingly, financial help from family. That's not a small shift. That's a fundamental restructuring of what homeownership means in this country. And here's the part that makes me crazy. The old rule of thumb said you should spend about 28% of your gross income on housing. That was the responsible number, the safe number, the you'll be fine number. You know what the average American homeowner spends now? 40%. Some markets, 50% or higher, half of everything you make just to keep a roof over your head. That's not building wealth, that's survival. Let me put this another way. Imagine you're running a marathon. You've trained for it, you're ready, you're pacing yourself perfectly. But every few miles, someone moves the finish line further back. And not only that, they start charging you for every step you take. That's what trying to buy a home feels like right now. The goalpost keeps moving, and the cost of trying keeps going up. So, how did we get here? Because this didn't happen overnight. This was a slow-motion disaster that took decades to build. First, we stopped building enough houses. After the 2008 crash, construction fell off a cliff and never fully recovered. We're millions of homes short of where we should be. Simple supply and demand. Not enough houses, too many buyers, prices go up. Second, zoning laws. This is the boring one that nobody talks about, but it might be the most important. In most American cities, it's literally illegal to build anything except single-family homes in huge portions of the city. No duplexes, no small apartment buildings, no townhouses. Just sprawling suburbs that require a car for everything. This isn't accident, it's policy, and it's choking the housing supply. Third, investors entered the chat. I'm talking about massive institutional investors. Companies like Invitation Homes and others, backed by billions of dollars, buying up single-family houses and turning them into rentals. In some markets, investors are buying 20–30% of available homes. They're not competing with you. They're obliterating you. They pay cash. They waive inspections. They can wait forever. You can't. And fourth, the interest rate trap. For years, rates were artificially low, like absurdly low, 2.5–3%. That pushed prices way up because people could afford more expensive houses with cheap money. But now rates are at 7% and prices haven't come down to match. So you've got the worst of both worlds, high prices and high rates. People who bought at 3% are never selling because why would they give up that rate? So inventory stays low, and the cycle continues. It's like musical chairs, except someone removed 40% of the chairs and the music never stops. Now let's talk about the invisible costs. Because when people talk about being house poor, they usually focus on the mortgage. But that's just the beginning. Property taxes. In some states, you're paying $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year just for the privilege of owning. And here's the fun part. They go up. Regularly. You don't get a say. Insurance, which has gone absolutely insane in the past few years. People in Florida and California are seeing their premiums double, triple. Some can't even get coverage anymore. Maintenance. The rule of thumb is 1% of your home's value per year. Got a $400,000 house? That's $4,000 a year just to keep things from falling apart. Roof needs replacing? That's $15,000 to $20,000. HVAC dies? $8,000 to $12,000. Water heater like my friends at Home Depot? $2,000 if you're lucky. HOA fees. If you've got them, that's another $200, $400, sometimes $600 a month. For what? So someone can send you angry letters about your lawn. Add all this up and your affordable mortgage payment suddenly has a lot of expensive friends. And then there's the cost nobody puts on a spreadsheet. The opportunities you miss because your money is locked in a house. The career move you can't make because you can't sell. The relationship you stayed in too long because splitting up meant losing the house. The trips you didn't take, the businesses you didn't start, the life you put on hold because you were too busy being house poor. You bought stability. But you paid for it with flexibility. And in a world that changes as fast as ours does, flexibility might actually be worth more. Let me bust some myths real quick, because these are the lies that keep people trapped. Myth number 1, renting is throwing money away. I hear this constantly. And yeah, when you rent, you don't build equity. That's true. But you know what else is true? When you own, you throw money away too. It's called interest. The first 10 years of your mortgage, most of your payment is going to interest, not principal. You're barely touching the actual loan. Add in taxes, insurance, maintenance, and the cost of all that capital sitting in your house instead of invested elsewhere, Renting isn't as wasteful as people think. Myth number 2. Real estate always goes up. Tell that to Japan after 1990. Their real estate market crashed and took literal decades to recover. Tell that to the people who bought in Las Vegas or Phoenix in 2006 and watched their home values get cut in half. Real estate is not a guaranteed win. It's a leveraged bet on a single asset in a single location. That's actually pretty risky when you think about it. Myth number 3. A house is a great investment. Historically, homes appreciate at about 0 to 1% above inflation. That's it. The stock market averages 7 to 10%. If you took that down payment and invested it instead, in many cases, you'd come out ahead. A house is a place to live. It can be a fine financial decision, but calling it a great investment is a stretch. Myth number 4. At least I'm building equity. Sure, but equity in your house is not money in your pocket. It's locked up, illiquid. You can't spend equity on groceries. You can't use equity to handle an emergency unless you take out more debt against it. Equity is theoretical wealth until you sell. Now look, I'm not saying home ownership is bad. For some people, in some situations, it absolutely makes sense. What I'm saying is that the decision deserves way more scrutiny than it gets, because the downside of getting it wrong is real, and millions of people are living that downside right now. So what do you actually do with all this? If you're already house poor, here are some real options. House hacking. Rent out a room, build an ADU in the backyard, put a space on Airbnb when you travel. Turn your liability into at least a partial asset. Look into refinancing, but do the math carefully. It doesn't always make sense. Challenge your property tax assessment. A lot of people don't realize you can do this, and seriously consider whether downsizing or even selling might be the right move. I know it feels like failure. It's not. It's math. If you're thinking about buying, change your calculation. Forget what the bank says you can afford. The bank does not care if you're happy. Calculate based on 25% of your net income, not gross. Have a real emergency fund before you even think about a down payment. And genuinely consider whether renting and investing the difference might get you further ahead. Run the numbers. Don't just assume buying is better. And here's the mindset shift that I think matters most. Stop thinking of a house as an investment or a milestone. Think of it as a tool. Does this tool serve your life, or does it consume it? Because a lot of people buy the dream house and then spend the next 30 years being owned by it. Your parents bought a house and then built a life around it. You might need to do the opposite. Build your life first and then figure out if and where a house fits into it. I want to zoom out for a second because this isn't just about individual choices. This is a systemic problem. Housing has become disconnected from wages at a fundamental level, and that didn't happen by accident. It happened because of policy choices, zoning choices, investment choices that prioritized existing homeowners and investors over people trying to get started. Other countries do this differently. Vienna has massive public housing that's actually desirable. Singapore has a government-backed system that houses 80% of the population. Japan reformed zoning at the national level and kept housing costs relatively stable despite having a much higher population density. We could fix this. It would require building more housing, reforming zoning, taxing empty properties and investment properties differently, and actually prioritizing affordability. Whether we will is a different question. But here's what you can do. Vote local. City council elections, planning commissions, zoning boards, that's where housing policy actually happens. That matters way more than who's president when it comes to whether you can afford to live somewhere, and when new housing gets proposed in your neighborhood, resist the urge to be a NIMBY. More housing is how we get out of this. All right, here's where I'll leave you. If you're feeling stressed about housing, if you're house poor and exhausted, if you're watching home prices and feeling like you'll never catch up, I want you to know something. This is not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not bad with money. You're playing a game with broken rules, and the fact that you're struggling doesn't mean you're a failure. It means the system has failed to keep up. The American dream was sold as a promise. Work hard, save money, buy a house, build wealth. And for a lot of generations, that formula worked. But the formula changed, and nobody updated the instructions. Maybe the dream isn't owning a house. Maybe the dream is owning your choices, having the flexibility to move when opportunity calls, having the savings to handle what life throws at you, having the freedom to live, not just exist. A house can be part of that, but it doesn't have to be, and it definitely shouldn't come at the cost of everything else. Figure out what a good life looks like for you. Then make financial decisions that support that life, not the other way around. I'm Dom. Thanks for hanging with me on this one. I'll see you in the next video.